In today's world, it can feel uncomfortable to say, I celebrate Black excellence. But I do, because I believe in recognizing the perseverance and grace it takes to move through spaces not always built with us in mind. And I don't say this to diminish the struggles and successes of other people. For me, this isn't about emotion or taking away other people's accomplishments. It's about my lived experience. I'm a proud graduate of Vanderbilt and Yale universities. I've lived in the right neighborhoods, and I'm surrounded by family members who are lawyers, doctors, educators, and business leaders. And yet, I've also encountered moments that remind me that excellence alone doesn't always shield us. I have been physically assaulted and called the N-word to my face. And just this past week at the gym, a woman moved when I sat down next to her to work out. From those subtle slights to open hostility, these reminders come unwanted, uninvited, and too often. That's why I celebrate Derrick Young Jr., because I know what it takes to keep showing up with purpose and excellence and to be that man in the arena, fully engaged in the fight for something better that Theodore Roosevelt wrote about when the world isn't always welcoming you with open arms. As the founder and executive director of Leadership Brainery, he's expanding access to higher education for underrepresented communities. And with his newest venture, Forever Young Spa, a luxury wellness destination in Boston, he's redefining who the wellness industry speaks to and serves. Derrick's work is grounded in faith, strength, and optimism. Because, as he reminds us, without that trinity, how can we be fit for the ongoing fight for a better tomorrow? This is At the Podium, and I'm Patrick Huey. Today, we're talking about leadership, purpose, and the power of wellness with Derrick Young Jr. Hello and welcome to At the Podium with me, Patrick Huey. At the Podium is a multimedia platform where story by story, we explore the resiliency of the human spirit with people who are using their own personal journeys to leave a positive and transformative imprint on our world today. At the Podium holds a space for meaningful conversation, inspiration, and life. Today, I'm thrilled to share the podium with Derrick Young Jr. Derrick Young Jr. is an innovative founder and leader working at the intersection of wellness, equity, and education. He is the founder of Forever Young, a growing collection of luxury wellness spas that blend expert care with advanced technology, including AI-enhanced recovery treatments. He is also the co-founder and executive director of Leadership Brainery, a nonprofit organization eliminating systemic barriers to master's and doctoral degrees for students and young professionals with limited access. Derrick, welcome to At the Podium.
Thank you so much, Patrick, for having me.
It's so good to have you on. You're the first person I've spoke to in this platform in almost a year. So I may be a little rusty, but I haven't had anything I wanted to really say. And then I saw the work that you're doing in the wellness space, your new work.
Yes, my new
I have to talk to
work.
Eric and see what's happening.
Well, look, it's an honor. I'm excited. If you haven't done a show since September, that probably means you have a lot of questions for me.
Crazy.
So I'm excited.
Yeah, with your work, I want to get right into it. With your work, you're literally sitting at the epicenter of these huge tectonic shifts that are happening in our country right now. And I wonder what it's like for you with your work with Forever Young Spa, which we will talk about, and Leadership Brainery. What is it like for you being at the center of these huge transitions and controversial things that are happening right now in the country?
Yeah, I think it's two very different parallels with my work at Leadership Brainery. We support underrepresented talent getting into competitive master's and doctoral programs. And now I have a spot, very two different things, but I do think they have some synergy. And, right now with everything that's going on in the country, higher education is under attack from a lot of different angles. And so, we're seeing our students very fearful of, going after advanced education. We're seeing universities fearful to partner with us to ensure that we're increasing access to advanced degrees. And overall, people are just, very tense, very nervous, very scared. And for me, I think, I'm always pretty optimistic, hopeful that things will get better. But then also, I'm just like, in the midst of all of this, we have to take care of ourselves, which is why I'm really excited to then introduce Forever Young as a way for people to prioritize their well-being, even in the midst of chaos. We need to find times to relax and rejuvenate, and be our best selves, because things will always continue to happen in our world. And if we could allow it to shut us down and break us down, then who's going to be in the fight for us all?
The fight continues. It doesn't matter politics, all that aside, the fight for representation and having a seat at the table will always be there for us. How do you keep your optimism?
This it's a great question, and I don't necessarily think it's transferable for everybody. But I do think that I'm very blessed. I know that when I put my energy towards something, typically because I do a lot of good for a lot of people and myself, I think that God gives me that return all the time. And so, I think for me, because I see the blessings that happen in my life because of the good work that I continue to put out in the universe, it keeps me hopeful because I know if things continue to happen to me that are positive, that things can happen to the world that's positive too. But again, I think it requires us to believe that good things are possible for us to maintain our hope. But the moment that we start to doubt, think that things won't get better. I think that's where we meet that universe with that energy. And it's like, well, things won't get better if you don't feel like they'll get better. But if you feel like they'll get better and then you're putting the actionable steps towards it, it has no other way but to get better eventually.
I look at this time that we're in, and I'm always asking, what is the lesson that we're supposed to learn?
Mm,
Because things are not happenstance, right? Things
right.
happen, in a bubble. And I
Mm,
wonder what those lessons are that we're supposed to take out of this. And it's not just this current time. It was COVID. It was the last
exactly.
5 or 6 years that we've been in, if not longer. And so
Right.
I think that, to your point, we can choose to be defeated. We can choose to feel however we feel about it. But I think the more proactive we can be in sort of our approach to it, the better off we're going to be on the other side of what this looks
Exactly.
like.
Exactly.
You say that you sit at the intersection of equity, education, and wellness. And I wonder, what is that intersection?
Yes. Well, it goes back to my public health roots. I've been in public health for a while now, for over 15 years, when I started my public health journey, working at community health centers, working for local governments, federal government, the CDC is where I started my work in public health. And so I always go back to the social determinants of health. And there's a number of social determinants, but definitely education and preventative health are two main ones that really resonate with me because I believe once you're educated and exposed to different things, then you do have now the power to make certain decisions. So many people don't get the opportunity to get certain education access or exposure opportunities. And that's why we have to continue to make those things available. But once you do get it, you have now the ability to unlock some differences in your life. And so, that's where I try to focus my work on how do we educate our communities and get rid of this, what me and, my partner will call information injustice. We've always had information injustice for many different communities around the world. And it's very intentional to ostracize folks from certain information or to delay information. We recently celebrated Juneteenth. We know what that was all about, the delay of information. So, we're trying to accelerate that knowledge and information for young people so they can have the tools to make proper decisions for themselves. Then, of course, then that opens up the opportunity for equity. And so equity, of course, we have to give more. We have to give more to communities who have lacked and been restricted from certain opportunities and information for so long. And so just naturally, my work in public health and education puts me on that equity rim because I'm always looking at those with their backs against the wall. Wellness. Now that's a little different. And I do think, unfortunately, wellness is a privilege for so many people. And typically it's the wealthy or the well-off who have the opportunity to be well and even to do preventative health. And especially now in the spa space, because we know that, massages and, spas are costly. And most people can't afford a $200 treatment for 60 minutes. And so, I'm really trying to, see how even in this new industry, do I expose more folks to the importance of investing in yourself?
Mm.
And so, like, you may go to a restaurant and buy a nice meal for, $150 plus the drink. And, that only lasted an hour and a half. But imagine if you can, pour into yourself, making yourself feel better, making your body feel better. All those times where we're just like, oh, my back hurt. I'm tense. I keep breaking out on my face. All those things that most people constantly complain about. I do think that they are preventative ways to help us just feel better and navigate everything that we're going through. We're going through a lot. The least we can do is feel good so that we can navigate it properly. But if we feel bad and we're trying to navigate the bad, it's probably going to end up being a bad situation. And so and I think that's why I like those intersections, the importance of education, the importance of making sure we're leveraging education and wealth to create more equitable access and equitable opportunities for people to eventually be well and take care of themselves. But it's going to require those two things for communities as a whole to finally feel like we don't have the health disparities and wellness disparities that we currently have.
It's so interesting that you say that about the deficits. I don't think people really realize the lack of access to wellness that many people on the planet have.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is tied to being in information deserts. I don't know if you know Quentin Vinny. You may know Quentin Vinny. I don't know if you know
I
him.
don't.
I've spoken to him a few times on this show, and he speaks very candidly about growing up in Baltimore in really sort of dire circumstances, and being in food deserts and being in wellness deserts. And for him, a part of his journey out was through wellness and yoga and juicing and getting proper nutrition. And you can't learn and grow if you're hungry or if you're not properly
Exactly.
nourished on just a very
Exactly.
baseline level. Uh,
Very.
and it's interesting. There's lots of research being done on the impact of wellness right now. And the numbers are staggering in terms of how many people, despite the focus on wellness, the heat and the financial investment in wellness, how many people still don't feel well in their lives.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it's not just because they don't live in the right zip code and all that stuff. I think it's epidemic.
Right.
Um, and so I was curious when you started Forever Young, you didn't call them luxury spas, you called them wellness spas. And I know you, so I know that was a very intentional use of that word. Can you talk about why you didn't lean into the luxury aspect, which everyone wants to be luxury now? That's the word, you know, dog food is luxury now. So
Exactly.
why did you choose not to go with that sort of adjective to describe Forever Young spas?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and I do want to say that we have in certain areas used the word luxuries. And I think we start with wellness because wellness is like multifaceted, right? And so you mentioned it earlier. You have food, you have housing, you have all of these social determinants of health. I believe that Forever Young has the opportunity as a spa to truly make people feel their best selves, and that's why we're Forever Young, because I do feel like that, age is not a number. Being Forever Young is not a number, but it's more so a lifestyle. And so, that's what we're saying at Forever Young. And I do feel like when I think about the future of this spa, it's just not about massages. It's just not about facials, but I do see as being a place that can convene, that can educate, that can have wellness resorts, that can have different retreats to really ensure that people are not just doing these one-off opportunities to treat themselves to wellness, but that we actually learn how to properly take care of ourselves. And that's coming from my own experience. I have a lot of issues that I deal with from different allergies to body mechanics that, really opened up this idea for like, well, Derek, if you're always feeling this way, you're always feeling tight, you're always, you can't eat most things, how are you really prioritizing in your life, how you can be held well holistically. And so that's what I really want Forever Young to embody is not just temporary wellness, but holistic wellness, which is why we did start off by sharing that we are a wellness spa.
I know that you've been on your own health and wellness journey. Was that the impetus for Forever Young Spa? Was it born out of something else for you?
That's a great question. It definitely was born out of my own journey. I've been working out for years now, trying to eat better, and so forth. But I had the privilege of spending 2 months in South Africa last year, and honestly, Patrick, it was life changing. And of course, things are a little cheaper in South Africa too. So you can imagine I was going to the spa all the time. I spent way too much time in different spots in South Africa. It really just opened up my mind to the need for me and other people to take care of themselves and to reset and to rejuvenate and to recharge. We actually have our two specials at Forever Young. One is called the Recharge, and the other one is called the Reset. And I think that's really important just for us. Again, we have so much going on. And so how do I take an hour or two? Those are 2 hour treatments, both of those. How do we take 2 hours to say, hey, I'm going through a lot. I just need to lie down. I need to relax. I need to forget everything that's happening in the outside world and literally recharge or reset. And so, that's what I was doing in South Africa. And so I really, when I came back to the States, I wanted to see how do I allow myself and other people to live the lifestyle that I was just living. And what better way to do that than to marry, what I've always done with preventative health and public health with also a little luxury, because I do like that as well, along with the educational piece. And so that's kind of how Forever Young came about. My last name is Young, and so I've always had this saying that I would say since I was a child about being forever young. And then when I thought about the spot, it was just the perfect name because I do feel like that oftentimes as people start to age, all you hear is people saying, oh, I'm getting older, I can't do the things I used to do. I can't bend over like I used to. And, I just want people to know, like, yes, of course, with age comes wear and tear on the body. But then we can also help prevent some of that wear and tear. But a lot of that comes from working out, being in the gym, and doing preventative care on our body, which I believe massage treatment, stress treatments, recovery treatments can really support all those different preventative issues that we typically go through as we age.
I've started going back to the gym and playing tennis.
Okay, I like that.
And I was like, oh yeah. I forgot.
Hmm.
Like, because I've moved in the last year. It's been a
Yeah,
very sort of just like, a very full time. And,
mhm,
sometimes it's easy to get off the track of what you are
for sure.
intending to do from a physical standpoint. And so for me to re-embrace that, I'm like, yeah, that's really like I can't miss it
Mm.
because I think what you said, it's really not about being a luxury. It may be a luxury to be able to afford to do it
Right,
in some instances, but it's not a luxury. It's literally the thing that can help prolong your life.
exactly.
And I think, I love the sort of pun around forever young, but I think I've worked in the spa and wellness space for 2 decades. We've been fighting for this space of legitimacy,
Mm,
um, because it is often viewed as a luxury.
exactly.
And I think what you're building and the audience is because you sit at that intersection,
Right.
you get to talk to a lot of different types of people.
Yeah.
So I think that message is really important. And I think it's even more important because it's coming from a Black man. And I feel like in the spaces that I've been so privileged to work in for so many years, there's just not a ton of us in these spaces.
Right.
And so you're like a pioneer. I wonder, do you feel like you're a pioneer in what you're doing?
You know what? Honestly, I feel like I've had the privilege of knowing you and the work that you've done, and so you really inspired me to take this leap of knowing that there is somebody, of your background who have went all the way to the top of the spa industry was honestly really inspiring for me. And so when I had the idea, I'm like, okay, well, let me hit up Patrick and really hear his thoughts. And so, I think that's why representation is really important. If I wouldn't have had anybody to think about that has been successful in this industry, who knows what decision I would have made. And so I do feel, very grateful and privileged to be able to now walk around as a Black man and say that I own a spot. I do think it takes a level of personal mindset and freedom to now be a spot owner because, people say, walk around and it's like, well, Derrick, are you looking a little stressed? You can't be a spot owner. You're looking stressed. I mean, so it's of course even pushing me to like some days when I am like, working extra late or, working extra hard. It's like, hey, am I embodying, what I'm putting out in the world? And I think that's helping me. And I think so many people, especially Black men, and just people in general, with everything that we're dealing with, it is hard to find that inner peace at times. And so, to be able to find that inner peace within myself, but then also have the capacity to do something like that, is really inspiring to myself personally. And I also think to your point of I have a really large audience. And so in a very diverse audience that I engage with. And so I'm doing different things like partnering with different companies and different organizations. And so I've been talking to news stations and community health centers and big corporations, about partnering with Forever Young as part of their wellness benefits for their employees. And, they talk about, we have certain wellness benefits, but not massage therapy. Which I think is really important. I mean, if you are in, the finance world, the higher education world, or even, the community health center world, typically your days could be a little stressful. And so your employer, just a little. And so your employer should understand the importance of not just providing health insurance, but then also, making sure that their employees can do things to rejuvenate themselves so they can show up to work feeling much better. And so, I do think that's a really exciting approach that Forever Young is taking. It's partnering with different companies and different organizations to bring wellness into them from a very diverse perspective. But I do feel like it will be important for me eventually to talk more about the need for more people to take care of themselves. And I do feel like it would be a special message coming from me. I'm just really trying to make sure I position myself right for the message to be received correctly and broadly.
This idea of messages, I think, is really interesting related to you specifically, because I feel that within the work, the businesses that you own, the message is key. And I wonder where that comes from within you to drive or to be the receptacle that then gives out that message.
It's a really great question. I would say my family growing up, they're not very vocal people. And so I can't necessarily say that I got it from them. I mean, they always did push me to be confident and be my best self. And so definitely, a piece of that comes from my family. But I think it's my own conviction of my identity as a Black gay man too. I think for so long, whether it was my family or society, telling me that I didn't belong in certain places or, I wouldn't be accepted by certain people or certain entities like religious entities. It made me feel always the need to speak up for people like me. And, same when I was in the education space during my master's degrees and then my doctoral program, I really felt like, hey, I was the only Black man to come into my program. And so if I don't speak up, who's going to speak up? And so I feel like I've been put in different positions just naturally to be conflicted enough to say, hey, Derrick, you may not want to speak up right now, but you need to speak up right now. And again, I feel like right now in this spa space, I'm feeling the same way. So many people message me on social media and say, oh man, like you're encouraging me to get back in the gym. Oh, I do need to take care of myself. And I do think to your point earlier, if, certain communities see people like themselves taking care of themselves, then they're reflecting on maybe I did have an extra hour today to go to the gym and I just didn't do it, And so it's like, how do we continue to put that representation out there and be innovative? I'm really excited to talk about some of the innovations we have at Forever Young that even could make these treatments more accessible to certain communities.
What are those innovations?
All right, so Forever Young is definitely where wellness meets innovation.
Yeah.
And so we have used, several different technologies and AI tools to really make this spa special. The biggest one, the one I'm most excited about, is our partnership with the Escape. It is one of the first AI massage robots in the country, but then also I'm lucky enough to have one of the first here in Massachusetts. And so, that's been really great. And, what it is this massage bed with robotic arms that really gives you a massage that you can control. But then at the same time, it gives you that privacy that you really need to just be in it by yourself. And so many people tell us that they say, I don't get massages because I don't like people touching them. It's like, well, I have a perfect solution for you. We have the escape, or, I don't feel comfortable when I'm getting a massage telling the masseuse to go lighter or go harder. But now with the robot, you can control that yourself. Again, we talked about the prices of massages. So right now, when it comes to our escape robot, the prices are pretty significantly cheaper than our hands-on treatment as well. And you can choose if you want a 15-minute, if you want a 30-minute, a 45, or a 60, because you may not want a whole 60-minute or a 90-minute massage. I think with the robot and the technology, it makes things much more accessible, much more fun. I think people see themselves and they say, wow, I've never thought about getting a massage by a robot before. Let me try it out. And so then once we get people in the spot, we can introduce them to a lot of our other wellness techniques too, because we do have stretch therapy, which so many people are just like, what is stretch therapy? And it's like, well, all those days where you're just tight, or you've been sitting at that desk too long, or you've been in the car too long and you really feel like you need a stretch, but you can't get it out. Well, assisted stretching is becoming extremely popular all around the country with a lot of different places popping up. And we also have that here at Forever Young. A few more things that we have is we have smart AI hot stones, which are pretty cool.
Yeah.
We have this small, like just square where all of our stones sit in, they plug in, you take them out, they're hot, you use them, you plug them back in, they warm up in a matter of seconds and you can start using them again. And so, of course it's convenient, but it's safer for our therapists, it's safer for our clients. And so we're really excited about that.
Eric Littman is the founder
Yes.
of Escape. And I was a skeptic
Hmm.
until I got on that table.
Yeah.
And I got off the table. This was a couple of years ago. I was at their offices in New York, and I said to them, "You've just changed this industry.
Oh, yeah.
You're never going back."
And because it's trained by actually massage therapists, it does feel like real hands. And so many people have come to Forever Young and told us, like, at some points I thought they were like real hands massaging me. And that makes me feel really good, especially because it's heated, it's really comfortable. You can control the music and the tone. It's just so much about it, Patrick, that I love. And I think you're really correct when you say that the industry is going to shift because of this. I mean, we do have to be careful because, of course, my massage therapist at Forever Young is like, well, this is not going to take my job. And I don't want it to take her job,
No.
and I definitely want it to be in addition to as another alternative for folks who may want something separate from the hands-on.
And there are times when you want that human touch, at least.
Exactly.
I think it works together I
It
think
does.
technology works together with the humanity, and that's where that sort of moment of brilliance.
Mhm.
To your earlier point, accessibility. There are many people who do, for many reasons, who do not want to be touched by another person.
Exactly. Exactly.
I don't think it changes the game in that kind of way. I don't think we lose workforce over that because a machine can't empathize with you the way a human
Exactly.
empathize with.
Right. Right.
The human touch, I think, will always be premium, and
It will be.
the magic can also, flourish in that human to human connection.
Yes, indeed.
You do so much. You to me represent what the future looks like, because my generation was told to go to college, get a big, expensive, fancy paying job, get a big, expensive house in the suburbs, drive a certain kind of car, and do that for the rest of your life. And you have this entrepreneurial spirit, which I think is reflected in many people in your generation and coming up behind you. And I love that your way of working is not limited, and that you have that courage to step out on faith and do these things that can change the world, actually.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, you mentioned something, you said the future. So, I actually have a show that I co-host with my partner called The Future at the Museum of Science here in Boston. I mean, we are one of the largest science museums in the whole world. And to that point of what you just mentioned, Patrick, I am that person. I have my hands in a lot of different things. But the reason why I'm privileged to be able to do that is because I have a great team. I mean, all my companies, hiring really great people, but then also putting the systems in place, and that's what I want, my peers and even people coming after me to really understand, like, when you start these businesses, start these ventures, like the vision and the idea is great, but it's really the systems that's going to allow you to sustain and scale. And I don't think a lot of people are exposed to the business systems that's required to scale, like, different CRMs or accounting practices or compliance tools. And so, I think for me, now having my nonprofit for 7 years, and, anybody that know anything about nonprofits, there's a lot of compliance, there's a lot of auditing, once you get to a certain threshold. And so it's really pushed me to get all the systems in place, especially for my team. I have, 8 full-time staff members now. And so to really ensure that, we're operating properly and we're really like showing up for the community that we're trying to serve at a leadership brain, we had to put all the processes in place and get the right people on the team. And that's the exact same thing that I'm doing for Forever Young. Right now, my manager, Sarah, she's absolutely incredible. She comes from the spa space. And so, she actually helped start up another spa with that founder about 5 years ago, and they just sold it to a private equity firm right here in the South End in Boston. And so she's really excited to now learn more about massage therapy, but then to grow Forever Young out in the next couple of years so that we can also start offering some of those other services that she's more expert on as well.
What is the legacy that you're building? Do you even know?
It's funny because actually, me and my partner had this conversation last night. Honestly, that exact question. Oh man, I do not know. I don't know. I never really know what the next 3 years of my life look like because honestly, it always surprises me. But I do feel like the legacy that I want to live is that I live the best life that I possibly could, without draining myself. And I do feel like, I'm doing a lot of work that is draining, like equity work, race work is very draining. So I also have to balance that with work that like really like fills me up. And so, that's what I'm really trying to create in my life is the the challenging pieces, the confliction of saying, hey, this is the work that you have to do for your community and for yourself to continue to uplift people. But then also, like, how are you ensuring that you're showing up in your most authentic self? For me, which is like being an artist. I like to paint. I like fashion. I love to dress. I like to look good. All those different things. I want to be able to do that too. And I think so many people feel like they can only do one or two things. But it's like, no, you can show up and look fabulous and, still work at the university, but maybe you had like this crazy hairstyle, this crazy shirt. Like we should be able to show up in this world how we want to show up. And I think that's the legacy, that I want people to reflect on when they think about me is that Derrick was always, showing up as himself. And I feel like for so long, I was in government, I was in higher education, and I had to muffle a lot of myself, and I didn't like that. I didn't like having to wear certain things or say certain things just to please people. And so now I'm really, showing up as my most authentic self to make sure that when I do leave this earth, people know who Derrick truly was. And I did not change that for anybody.
May we all get to live and be our authentic selves. That seems to be the thing that we need to be doing. When you're not, that's when when wellness goes off.
Exactly.
You're trying to do something that's not who you are.
Exactly.
I love that.
Yeah.
Derrick, thank you so much for your time and this conversation. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you so much for this platform, Patrick. And, again, I talk about you often. I know you probably don't realize, but, even, like your former positions here in Boston, as I continue to frequent certain places and I tell people what it used to be like, who used to be here, the presence that you bring and the work that you do is also, really inspiring and uplifting. And, I know it's not always easy being in this spa space because you do feel like you always got to be on and you always got to be positive and you always got to reflect that wellness. And I know they must be tough. And so, I just want to thank you too for all the work that you put in and for what you've given the universe as well.
Thank you so much. I receive that.
Yes, please do. Please do. Just take it in.
I'm taking it in. I'm taking it
Exactly.
in. All right. To those of you who are watching or listening, remember, we all have a voice. We all will leave a legacy. live and choose wisely. Bye, everyone, and thank you again, Mr.
Thank you all.
Bye.